Look, Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White clearly like and respect one another, right? But that doesn't mean they always see eye to eye. And I am beginning to suspect more and more that there's a bit of a divide between the way that they see the game and the way that they think the Indiana Fever should play. You can just hear what they have to say and connect the dots a little bit. Not to mention, it didn't go well against the Golden State Valkyries. That was obvious to everybody, of course. Just a rough performance from the Fever. And on its own, that wouldn't be that big a deal. Clark just back, getting her acclimated, all those things. But it's these repeated statements or this issue that seems to be lingering under the surface when it comes to the team's offensive identity that is interesting. I put a pin in it way back when, and that was the New York Liberty game on May 24th. The first Liberty game where the Fever barely lost that game. Caitlin Clark went out with a quad injury after it. But it was before the game, some things were said that piqued my interest just a little bit. I filmed this one myself from the press room. This was Caitlin Clark on the way the team was playing.
Yeah, I think I conceded a little too much to Atlanta in the last game. The first game, they guarded me the same way, and I was a little more aggressive. I think we need to do a better job of getting me the ball in transition, whether somebody's there or not. I think there's a fine balance of playing me off the ball and also getting the ball in my hands. That's when I'm the best in transition. Everybody knows that. I'm very open about that.
That's when I'm the best in transition. I'm very open about that with the ball in my hands, right? That's when I'm the best. Caitlin Clark says that. So a few minutes later, Stephanie White sits down at the podium, and I asked her about what Caitlin Clark had to say during that section. You'll hear me here. But she was also talking about Clark being a better screener to get herself free. Obviously, screening happens off the ball.
But then when we have opportunity to practice, go through reps in practice of what these angles look like, it's her being a really good cutter and screener herself. I think she missed some opportunities that we talked about there. We have to anticipate that teams are going to give us different looks. I thought she was incredibly patient. I was so proud of her. Not just with the physicality with which the game was played, but, wasn't getting the looks that she was used to getting. She was patient. She was poised. She made the right play. The play that she made at the end of the ball game to find AB was elite. She could have very easily got impatient and just taken a bunch of shots. But that shows her growth, and it shows the depth of our team to be able to come away with wins in those types of situations.
Coach, to that point, Caitlin talked about the balance in the offense, playing off the ball, getting the ball, getting out in transition. How do you work on that? What have you seen so far in finding that balance where she's got the rock or she's coming off screens, getting open looks?
Yeah, some of it will be based on how teams play her. Some of it will be based on, after free throw, after timeout situations, dead ball situations. Then it becomes, getting comfortable in what we're looking for, off of that. I think, Caitlin's ability to score above the break on the 3-point line is elite. We got to figure out how we use her when she gets below the break. What are some different actions that are good to get her loose? And again, great scorers, if they're great screeners, they're going to get open looks. And so continuing to emphasize that and how we use her. Caitlin's a player that right now has the most talent around her that she's ever had. And now, our job as coaches is how we figure out how to put us in position to be the best team that we can be to compete nightly.
And that wasn't it. She was later asked about the Indiana Pacers, and it was kind of interesting the direction she went there.
Fourth quarter, we've got players who aren't afraid to make the hard, tough crunch time plays. And, I thought it was really, kind of the epitome of the Pacers last night when you listen to Pascal Siakam and you listen to Tyrese talking about any given night, it can be anybody's night, right? There can be a different leading scorer every night. I think we can be that type of team, buying into the we over the me, and really epitomizing that in how we play. And I thought Tyrese's point, they're going to try to take him away. And his ability to get others involved early is a great lesson for Caitlin. She's been able to do what she wants to do for the most part because she's a generational talent. But the great teams are going to take that strength away. So how we utilize others around us, how we as coaches start to find advantage in some of those what might be perceived as disadvantage.
So you get the point there. Some of the same themes that have emerged as of late, which would be one of the reasons Coach Stephanie White started Ari McDonald next to Caitlin Clark against the Valkyries, which again, she explained by saying it helps to take the burden off of Caitlin.
Yeah, I mean, I like the ability to have two primary ball handlers on the floor, particularly with a team that comes aggressively, in the two-man game. Being able to play off of one another, being able to give the opponent some different looks, and quite frankly, for C specifically, not having to have her play under duress 94 feet the entire time she's on the floor.
So that's, something she's brought up. And it makes sense too. Caitlin Clark does get harassed by the defense, is the subject of all the defensive attention. She can't have the ball in her hands every single play, all the time down. You do want to give the defense different looks. Like, that does make sense. The problem is if there's a philosophical divide. And Caitlin Clark, when she talked about this at practice the day before, didn't exactly seem thrilled by the prospect. She parroted her coach, but she didn't seem thrilled when she was coming back, and that set my spidey senses off a little bit.
Steph has talked about kind of taking some pressure off you with Ari kind of running point in some actions and you playing off the ball. Just how do you think that will help when you reintegrate onto?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be nice probably not to have to bring the ball up against pressure 94 feet, but like I said, that's what I'm best at. So we're still going to do a lot of that. It's, I think, finding a balance and finding the ways to give the defense different looks, and me becoming a better screener and being a good screener and coming off of screens and screening for Kels and all that different type of stuff. That's a whole nother layer of things that the other team has to prepare for. So like I said, I feel like it makes us less predictable, and I mean, you're still going to see a lot of the same things that we do, but at times move us off the ball, and especially out of timeouts and drops, maybe not so much our live flow and our live play. I think we'll be solid.
So there you go. That was, Caitlin Clark again saying, that's when I'm at my best, right? Emphasizing that. And finding the balance makes sense. It does. I'm not going to disagree with that or push against that, because Stephanie White is correct in the sense that Clark can't do it every time, every play, all the time. You want to get her free for easier shots. You do want to get the rest of the team involved. At the same time, you don't want to stifle her transcendent ability. And that's where the philosophical divide could come into play, because Stephanie White said something. I brought this up on one of my last, videos, but she said something on a November 2024 broadcast of the Mavs about Luka Doncic. And this was the quote: "You see, the Mavs just play differently without Luka on the floor. When he's not on the floor, that ball is moving, it's popping, multiple players getting involved in the action." This was somebody summing it up, talking about, Luka having a high usage rate. And as much as Caitlin Clark gets compared to Steph Curry, she's closer to a LeBron James, Luka Doncic archetype in my mind. That heliocentric offensive player who makes the entire team go as an engine because of their elite playmaking. And that, is the issue, is if Stephanie White has such a problem philosophically with that style of play that she takes away what Clark does best. And again, they still have time to find the balance, but there's enough there for me to wonder if there's a little fever friction, a little bit of a divide, something that could manifest itself as the season goes along. Let me just say, I know that Caitlin Clark likes Stephanie White, but I can also tell that she's having an issue a little bit with the way, all of this is playing out. So the coach needs to make sure she keeps her eye on the ball when it comes to how Clark is being utilized on and off the ball, because she can't stray too far away from her star player's vision.